Okay, so now my slabs are all scored and slipped. I am going to take off any extra slip. Remember, extra slip will cause me trouble. So I just want to put it exactly where I need it. And then I'm going to go ahead and press that wall into place. There we go. And I'm going to look at it from the helicopter view and make sure that it is totally getting centered there on the top of my project. I'd hate to add my thing after all the work I did to make that symmetrical and have it not be centered. So I'm going to double check that, turn it around, and I can slide it a little bit if it didn't quite get there. So now I have a couple of things to address. I need to close this seam, so I'm going to use my fingers and some counter pressure to pull this across and close that seam on the outside. And then I can actually use my knife tool and use it as a tiny little rib tool to clean up that edge. Look at that. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? Then I'm going to go through and adjust and connect this lower section here. So just like we did a seam worm, I'm going to add a little tiny seam worm where these two connect, so I don't see the seam, and so I make sure it doesn't crack in the firing. So the easiest way to do that is to use just a little tiny piece of clay like this and press it into the wall, using counter pressure, right? Like we learned, so my hand is on the inside and pushing back against there so that I don't distort my form. The other important thing is that this form right here is soft leather, so that I can't, when I hold it and move it around, it doesn't change. Do not do the next step if your project isn't soft leather. It won't work. You'll wreck your form that you just built. Okay, so I got that on there. So now I'm going to use my finger to smooth it with counter pressure. And I'm pressing pretty hard now because I want it to disappear. So I'm going to keep going around, stretch that clay, smooth it down into there. Whatever it needs. Edge of my thumb, tip of my finger. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now you'll notice that my project did not distort because it was soft leather. Don't forget that. If you try to rush this in one day, it's not going to work. You've got to work this project step by step with drying in between. Okay, that looks pretty all right, doesn't it? Pretty all right. So now I'm going to store this again after I finish the finish work until that until this neck is soft leather. Okay, so my project has gotten soft leather, meaning that it wants to hold itself up, but it's still soft enough that I can work with it. So at this point, I'm deciding on what is the final shaping that I want to do with the lip and the neck, that relationship. And what I've decided is I want this to be a little vase for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use my fingers to turn out this edge, and I'm going to try to turn it out the same amount of distance from here to here, all the way around. But soft leather is the way to go, and helicopter view, right? That will help you see how much you're turning out. All right, and then I can make sure that this circle is still a circle in the center. That black shape is still a circle. Make sure that this has the same amount of bend that's going outward and the same angle of bend that's going outward. And I'm noticing that it's starting to crack a little bit on the edges. So I'm going to use a little bit of slip on those edges. And as I'm smoothing them, it's going to fix the cracks. You can see how that's fixing it up, huh? Also, if there's a big enough crack, I can do what's called slip potato chip. Let's say one of these things opens up a whole lot. I can add a little bit of extra clay. Use the plastic clay for this And you can see a spot here where it's gotten a little bit of a dent in it. I can just add some of that right onto that freshly slipped clay, blend it in. I'm just going to use some counter pressure and really light touch. You guys are amazing. You're going to figure this out, I promise. And I can use my knife tool to work with it. Notice again the counter pressure. Anything that I'm doing, I want to press a little harder, so I need to have my finger under there so that I don't totally mess it up. All right, and then I'm going to work at it from the side view and make sure that this curve is the same all the way around. So you can see it got a little bit low there where I was working on it, so I have to push it up, bring it down, push it up, bring it down, so the curve matches, curve matches, curve matches, curve matches, all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. And where I added that clay, it made a mess on the underside. So I am going to really spend a lot of time here now finishing this lip before I call it done. Between the adding and subtracting of clay, between the slip and looking at it in the helicopter view, checking it in helicopter view, making sure it's a circle, and checking it from the side view to make sure that this angle is staying the same all the way around, all those things. Just going to keep working on that lip. The lip is the most challenging part, and it's the most important because it's the end of the project and it's the top of the project, and it describes that leading edge that people's eyes are going to see. So you're going to fight for your Olla's right to be totally symmetrical. Okay, I want to do a couple other little things with you. Like, for example, I decided as I was working on this that I don't like this edge very well. It's like not totally working for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my knife at the elevation where I want to cut it off. And I'm going to cut it off right here. And then I'm going to turn my pot, and I'm pressing my elbow against my body and turning my pot. And in so doing, I'm going to get a nice level line. Don't just cut randomly. Mark your cut before you make it. So you can see how it made me a nice line that I can follow here. And then I'm going to get down underneath the pot so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to stick the knife in, and I'm going to trim towards my fingers. And I'm going to hold what I'm trimming and follow that line that I made, because it's going to be level with the tabletop. Follow that line, 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 follow that line. There we go. Oh, oh, and up, up, up. Follow that line. Okay. All right, there we go. Right there, level. There we go. So then I can also hit it on the tabletop. There, so I leveled that up. And now I'm going to try again on my lip. I got a pretty good even wall to work with. And I just changed my mind on the design. I want the whole thing to flare out here. And I thought I'd just show you, what happens when you change your mind and how you can, and it's okay, and it's clay, and stuff can change. It's all right. So now I'm going to go ahead, and the clay's a little thicker here, so it's going to be a little easier to work with. But it's also a little soft right now, so I'm going to go and I'm going to let it get harder. So there were a couple aesthetic reasons why I changed it. I wanted there to be a nice relationship between this distance from the bottom of the foot to the waist and from the neck to the lip. And I feel like this is better, like relationship. It's more of a 1/3, 2/3, or a golden ratio, if you will, between those two lengths. So I like that better. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on some little teeny tiny handles. But I can't put those on until I have this finished work where I want it. So I'm gonna work that just a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna put some handles on my pot now. So I've got a little square slab of clay that I made. I'm just gonna cut out some handle shapes. So I want them to be, they're gonna end up being shorter than this, but this, I'm just working with the chunk of clay here to make some handles. So here's gonna be one handle, like that, and I have some work to do on its finished work and symmetry, but I was thinking it might look pretty cool on the side of the pot like that. Okay, so that's one of them, and we'll just cut out another one, try to make them the same size as each other. There we go, trim that. And how long was that? Well, it was about that long. Put one on top of the other so that they come out the same length. There we go. Now, I've got some finish work to do, but I kind of like that sort of hard edge that they have, square edge. So, that's gonna look pretty nifty coming out of that pot right there. Yeah. So I'm gonna do some finish work on those little guys and then score and slip them on. Okay, so I've been working on my handle here. So here was the original, and then this is the one I like. I decided, even though I like the hard edge, that it didn't really fit the theme of my pot. My pot is so round, you know? So I rounded my handle, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of a little horseshoe. So I've been working on its finished work. Much easier to do that before you put it on than after the fact. So keep that in mind. And I'm just gonna soften, like, and round the shape of it before I put it on. Then I'm gonna just score and slip it, sklunk, to my pot. Don't be afraid to put a lot of slip when you're doing your handles because they have such small attachment points. So I do a lot of slip, and then I really push them into place here. Push them into place. If this thing is pushing in on you when you're doing this, it means you didn't wait until it got leather had. Make sure you work on your work like this at the leather had state, huh? All right. There we go. That looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Okay. I can see somewhere I should have done some more finish work too. All right, I'm just working on the finish work on my last little handle here. I've been setting it down on the mat and using the side of the knife tool to kind of carve it out till it's the same thickness as its buddy on the other side, and then kind of trying to compare them until they get similar. They look pretty good now. We'll just score them on. I like to just attack this pretty deep score marks here, okay, on this stuff. All right, when you're putting on handles, you want to make sure they end up exactly opposite each other. So get in your helicopter view and make some marks for yourself so that they align exactly across from each other. So I'm making some marks here before I make my score marks. All right, back to lip finish work. We want to make sure that the circle that is down inside the pot is round. So I have an edge here that's not symmetrical, so I'm going to scrape it with my knife tool to remove material so that it's actually round when I look down inside of it. You see how it's got a flat spot there, and it's gotten hard enough that I can't fix that with by just pressure anymore. So I'm doing that, and I'm doing that all the way around. So the first place to look is at the circle that is the black circle, which is the opening of the pot. We want that to be round. So I'm using my knife tool to round it, round it, round it. Scrape off stuff that's not working. There we go. That feels much better. Don't you think that looks rounder? Then we're moving on up the lip, and we want to make sure that whatever is folded out on this thing is got the same angle and the same treatment. So again, I like my knife tool for this. I can create that angle and move it around the pot. Spin and turn the pot. Again, working standing up really helps you to achieve the control that you want. And then the lip of the pot needs to be all the same thickness, so you can see where this distance right here is the same over here, and it's pretty good on around here. But then right here, it gets a little thick, just right there. It's like kind of meh. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape a little bit of stuff away till it has the same thickness there. All right, a little finish work after I do my sculpting, carving. And then there's a spot on this lip where it's really quite thin. You see that down there, this whole section? It's not quite thick enough. So that's where I grab a little bit of extra clay that is soft. So I'm going into my bag here. And then I'm going to get a little bit of slip. And you can only do this while your project's still soft leather. So make sure you don't let this pot dry out till you're done. Add a little bit of slip. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the tiniest little bit of clay to this edge and get it to be the same thickness as what I have on the rest of it. Okay, that looks better, doesn't it? Yeah. So a little bit of slip, clean up the inside. Awesome, that looks pretty good. Working on the circle. That shadow shape should be the same. You see how there's a shadow that sort of defines this plane versus the top? You want that to be all the same. So yeah, it's that subtle. It absolutely is. And then I'm noticing now that this is a little chubby over here, so I'm going to just trim that down a little bit. Just shave it off with my knife tool and working my way around the pot. Shaving, trimming till the very top, the apex, the complete motion of the pot is all the same all the way around. There we go. That's looking like a decently finished lip. Slip is your friend. If you got cracking happening, add the slip in. And I'm just adjusting my handles. I notice they're kind of poking out in different directions here. What I can notice from top view. Okay, my little pot. Now I've got to go back and fix things that happened on the outside from all of that work I did. You see where I added that clay. I have to integrate it into the side of the pot now so it doesn't look like something weird. Something weird. Yeah, that's a technical term, Sandwina. Something weird. Yeah. Oh, and I managed to put a dent in that lip, that neck right there. So yeah, you're just back and forth, inside, outside, upside, downside. And when you're all done, oops, you want to sign your pot.